at 6 p.m. here on Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. No, the official meetings called for Chapter 310, Chapter 130 of Massachusetts General Laws, and that's related to the protection of the wetlands. Notice of this message, this meeting was posted in Town Hall. All right. Anyway, you've all heard this before. And for those of you that are wearing masks, thank you. I hate them as much as you do. Also, this meeting is being recorded for public purposes. I'm supposed to tell you that through the Massachusetts ethics laws. All right, so let's get underway here. So first, order of business, minutes for approval of July 30th, 2020. We have an amended version of those minutes. Someone make a motion to accept them as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Merrily, do we have any meeting there? No mail. No old business. New business. We have a notice of intent from Manuel Almeida, 8 Wild Rose Lane. A notice of intent was filed by Manuel Almeida for property located at 8 Wild Rose Lane, map 18, lot 13G. The applicant proposes to replace an existing soil absorption system with a 1,500-gallon tank, distribution box, and a 15-foot by 29.6-foot leaching field with related grading within the 100-foot buffer zone or bordering vegetated wetland. The applicant is represented by Michael Koska of Michael J. Koska and Associates Incorporated. Plan name is Soil Absorption System Plan 8 Wild Rose Lane, dated July 22 of 2020. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael Koska. I'm a registered engineer and a registered land surveyor in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Here representing Manuel Almeida, 8 Wild Rose Lane, Acushnet, in his endeavor to replace a failing septic system. We went out in presence of the Board of Health and was tested. 1, 2 were out here, the existing system. The soils there weren't that great, so we went back here towards the house. We tested 3 and 4, which were more conducive to subsurface disposal. We took a sample, we did some weeding, and we did a 70% sand, 23% clay, and 27% silt. The edge of the wetland was flagged, where basically it was the full slope of the edge of the lawn. In pink is the 50-foot buffer zone, and blue is the 100. So you can see the system lies entirely between the 50 and the 100. The closest part of the soil absorption system is 59 feet from approximately flag 4. The system would consist of a 1,500 multi-compartmental tank into a pump chamber and into a bed of contactors that would be able to handle 330 gallons per day. The area which is protected by in green, I have erosion control, proposed draw waters. From that point, it seems like this pipe in the middle of the house. In the middle of the house, then the topography goes both ways. So probably half of the system will go this way in the event of a rainstorm. Mr. Almeida is a landscaper, so I'm sure that with the uprolling lawn season or grass growing season, that you'll immediately take care of that and get the area stabilized. For your on-site, say the center of the 1,500 tank, the center of the 1,000, and the full corners of the facility. It's 10 feet, well, 16 feet off the line, then it's 10. There's a roll out of lights here, and just want to put it in the test bits and felt that was the best area. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them for them.
Any questions from you?
Yes, I don't know, can you see it from that angle? Okay. By code, the tank is 10 feet at 2% pitch, and the system's 21, the minimum is 20. So they're the shortest distances to allow for the solids to enter the tank. So 10, to answer your question, 10 feet from the house, and the pump chamber is just parallel to it. So that connects into the existing plumbing. You can see the outline of the existing 1,000-gallon tank. This is basically the same spot, but further over to the west.
What's going to happen with the old tank and the old system?
The old system here is a leaching
Oh, it's
field.
way out there, okay.
So I think that once it's abandoned, it's stabilized with the stone that's right on top of the existing soils out there. The tank will be pumped and crushed and removed from the site because to replace it with the 15, you need a clean area to work. So it'll be carted outside.
Anybody else have questions?
Yes, there is an alarm here that in the event that the high level with the floats, where there would be a capacity of 687 gallons, if it gets up that high, the alarm will go off and tell the people that something, either the circuit's not working or the break is thrown or something, investigate it or get my backup in the house. In the 1500, where they used 330 gallons a day, assuming that it was empty. It has approximately a 4 to 5 day capacity. So, but usually they stay full, and if that were the case, you would think that they would hire the local sewer disposal to get it done and use it temporarily as a type.
Certainly going to be an upgraded waste system at the property, so I don't have any further questions. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to offer a positive order of conditions for this. We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? The abstention? Noes? Good, that's unanimous.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. You would like me to do with the microphone? Put that.
Yes, please. Wipe it down. Okay. So while they're doing that, I've been advised by town council that if we get to more than 25 people in the audience, we're going to have to postpone the meeting, and I don't want to do that because you've all taken the time to come here, and I don't want to do this again in 2 weeks. I'd rather get this going now, so I'm going to take it at count. There's 22 of you out there. Good. Huh? Plus us. Well, let's 3, 4, 7, 9. With Eric, the cameraman, we have 29. Appreciate you guys coming out, but also thanks for this too. And this is televised, so you can watch it from the comfort of home, opposed to these hard chairs. Okay.
That's you on the notice.
23. I didn't know that until I walked in, Mr. Vigneault.
Thank you.
I was advised by town council when I got here. Yep. So, we need our presenter to get this moving along. The next item on the agenda, we have a discussion as led by the Assistant Health Agent, Patrick Hannon, regarding the PJ Keating Quarry. We need Mr. Hannon to get this started. Okay. And while we're doing this, if during the meeting any of you have a question that you'd like to ask, for the record, we have to go to the microphone, tell us your name, we know you live in town. If you don't want to tell us your street address, you don't have to do that, but at least, we need your name for the record. Okay, the agent will begin. Eric's going to check on it. We've seen some visuals, but I don't know if there's anything you'd like to.
Mr. Chairman, Pat Higgins, Board of Health. I do have some extra photos, if you want to take them and pass them among yourselves and take a look at them. They're from the PowerPoint presentation that we put on for the Soil Board of Health. Some of the pictures delineate the wetlands line and the priority habitat against the silt piles on the back of the property. That'll mean the most to you from all of the pictures.
So for the record though, so that way it's out and it's clear, can we have a little bit more specifics about where the piles are, where the violations are, whether it's from you or from Merrill?
I'll just tell you what I saw in my first inspection that I alerted Merrill to. So, having had trouble getting on the property, I had a person come in with a drone, and he flew a drone over the quarry, and at the very back of the property by Wing Lane, along the power line easement there. So on the opposite side of the power line, there's a large area that has what appears to be silt that's been built up, and there's some septic basins or something they've made there. In one of the pictures, you'll see that the slope actually failed on one of the basins, and a lot of erosion and siltation down into and beyond the line where the resource area is from DEP maps, and also into the priority habitat. In 2009, there was a significant amount of the woods back there that was listed as priority habitat by the National Heritage Endangered Species Program. Prior to 2009, that wasn't happening. And that's why it's not in there, but there's any priority habitat on that side of the property. So if you look at the pictures, some of them are close up, you can see where there's been a lot of erosion on the slopes. It's eroded down into the resource area and into the priority habitat. There's a lot of wind-blown dust coming off because the piles are so high. We went up on one of the files, and you can actually see the Bedford Harbor from the top of the file. And then there's some pictures of the file where the concrete washout was dumped. And you can see the concrete washout running down into the woods as well. And that's about it.
Want to add any detail to that?
Just that there's snow running into the, well, that is the focus on anyway. It's been printed into the plan looking at that, but my guess is that they may even have an encroachment on it themselves. But it's hard to keep there, it's the tall piles, you know, figure out exactly what you want. So I said, but
So we have a concern that there are piles of silt, dirt, or whatever, where they shouldn't be, either in the buffer zone or up against the wetland line. Is that when it rains, these piles are then draining or washing into the resource areas, hence the enforcement order being written. Mr. Vigneault, I don't know if you'd like to respond to this. I know we have a letter from you, but if you'd like to. Okay.
Procedures as we go.
We don't.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Luke Legere. I'm an attorney with Luke Greger and Legere in Boston, and I'm here tonight representing PJ Keating. I, frankly, as I stand here at the moment, still am completely unclear as to what is alleged to have happened at the PJ Keating site, which would violate any aspect of the state wetlands protection. I believe I just heard Ms. Kelly, I'm sorry, it was a little hard to hear you. I think I heard you say you thought there may have been encroachment in the buffer zone. Okay, thank you. Regardless, as the Commission is well aware, this is a very large site. There are numerous stockpiles. I still don't know which stockpiles we're talking about, or where on the property we're talking. The photos that have been shared with the Commission haven't been shared with us. There's something very fundamental to the law called due process, a fair opportunity to be heard. I know this Commission is involved, many of you anyways, with the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions. You probably recognize my firm's name, maybe myself. We're very active at MACC, present every year at the annual conference. I'll be presenting in October, a little differently this year, but for the fall conference. I don't have to tell you that there's a process that MACC recommends for a situation like this, where there's a concern that, as I understand it, there may have been some work done in a buffer zone. And it's not jumping right to an enforcement order. If there's a concern on the part of the Commission, your agent could send a letter. The Commission could ask PJ Keating to meet, explain your concerns, hear their side of it, maybe find a way to resolve this short of having to jump to enforcement. But to just hit PJ Keating with an enforcement order, which gives no indication as to where the alleged violations have occurred on the property, which, by the way, doesn't even allege an alteration to a wetland resource area. It alleges some stockpiling in a buffer zone. There's nothing in here about an alleged violation to any jurisdictional resource area that may have resulted from this. Instead of having the opportunity to receive notice of the Commission's concerns, an opportunity to respond, remedy any violations that might have occurred, short of an enforcement order, unfortunately here, we jumped right to the enforcement proceeding that we're here tonight for. As I say, we're learning right along with you about these alleged violations, and I really want to stress, as I stand here, I'm still not clear what they are. But we're here here tonight to take this serious. The commission the agent's enforcement order that the commission is being asked to ratify tonight calls for us to file a notice of intent. Again, I'm sorry to sound like a broken record here. I don't even know what we'd be filing a notice of intent for. We heard a relatively brief presentation from Mr. Hennon. As I understand it, he seems to be basing his opinions on maps GIS, some aerial photos, some drone footage. That's evidence really of nothing. It's maybe cause for concern. As I said before, there are procedures that the commission could follow to follow up on those concerns, to address them, to vet them. It's not jumping right to an unsubstantiated enforcement order. I understand that the commission hasn't been to the site to view the areas where these alleged violations have occurred. I call them alleged violations. I'm not sure there are actually any alleged violations here, but where the stockpiling and maybe a buffer zone has occurred. The commission is being asked sight unseen to ratify this enforcement. One thing we didn't hear in Mr. Hannon's presentation was anything about his credentials, why he's qualified to offer his opinion to the commission on those things, or why the commission should take his opinion. We're here tonight, as I said, because we take this seriously. We want to work with the commission. We want to do the right thing. And I believe there's a way that can be done, but it's not through ratification of this enforcement order. It's through having a conversation. It's through explaining to PJ Keating what are the concerns and giving them a chance to respond. If the commission ratifies this enforcement order, our hands are really pretty tied with respect to what our options are. And now we're in a contentious relationship, which PJ Keating would rather, and I hope the commission would rather avoid it too. If your concern, as I trust it is truly about protecting jurisdictional wetland resource areas, we'd much rather work together cooperatively to do that than to have to fight through enforcement proceedings, which in our view are wholly unlimited. So we are asking you tonight not to ratify this enforcement order. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized? My name is Jeffrey Blake, and I'm with KG Law, your town council. I hear my brother, and he is very well credentialed. He's 100% right. He does a lot of these. But he doesn't represent cities and towns like I do. I've represented cities and towns for the last 17 years. I've seen a lot of wetlands violations. These are probably some of the worst wetlands violations I've ever seen in my life. With respect to the evidence, I think either you don't have to take Mr. Hannon's word for it. Your conservation agent not only reviewed the photographs, but she also conducted an inspection. She had to conduct the inspection because she wasn't allowed on the property. It wasn't allowed out in the back where a lot of the violations were occurring because PJ Keating wouldn't let her. We got a court order to go on, and we went on and we inspected. So for PJ Keating to come in and say, "Oh, gee, we want to work with you," I think that's wonderful, and I think we should work with them. No doubt about it. But I think you should ratify this order, and that will not prevent us from working with PJ Keating. They've offered to allow you to come on and inspect their site. I think you ought to take them up on it. I think you ought to ratify the order and then go out, and if you find that for some reason that Mayor Lee Kelly is wrong, you can come in and you can rescind that order. But for now, she was an eyewitness. She was there. She's your agent, and she's testified that they were not only filling, or they were filling certainly buffer zones, they had alterated wetland resource areas, and there are a whole host of other violations that you can see from those photographs. If PJ Keating wants those photographs so they'll know what we're talking about, I'm happy to share those photographs with them.
They're a public record, and they have been a public record now for probably a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. So if you ratify this order, it's not like suddenly you can't continue to work with PJ Keating to come to a solution that, one, protects the environment, and two, helps PJ Keating continue on their path to be an active and responsible business here in town. So I would suggest that there are ample reasons and ample evidence to ratify that order, and you ratify the order, and we can continue to have this discussion with PJ Keating. In fact, I think he would probably welcome that. We want to resolve this. But resolution isn't, you can't come on our property, and when we finally get a court order and find all kinds of violations, now we're going to talk. So I suggest you ratify the order, and then we can continue talking.
Would you like to respond?
I'm pretty sure about what I saw, you know, and there's piles as high as mountains in the back of that road. You have seen them just from driving by, these big snowplows. And they are all encroaching on the wetlands and the priority habitat. There's no doubt about that.
Is there anybody else here that wanted to ask a question or speak for this, or speak about this? Anybody on the commission with questions? Please.
How you doing, everybody? I'm Chris Hendrick, State Representative. I represent Acushnet in Bedford State House. Are we allowed to ask PJ Keating any questions, or?
Yeah, just as long as you know the usual talking through me, I'm sure.
Yeah, just a quick question. Assuming everything in the report would be true, how long would it be to remedy all these potential alleged violations?
Here again. I'm sorry I can't answer the question. I'm not trying to dodge it, Mr. Chairman. We simply don't understand what the alleged violations are. So to answer how long it might take to remedy those is just...
Since you're at the microphone, I'm going to direct this question to you with also the chance for Mr. Blake to respond as well. So the letter that I received that Mr. Vigneault handed out at the beginning of the meeting, and you had referred to this as well, like not knowing where these stockpiles are on the property. In your experience in this field, and this is the first time any of us have had to deal with anything like this, when enforcement orders come in on a property this big, are those locations of whatever the violation is specified?
Absolutely. I would expect that, Mr. Chairman. And you're precisely right. It's really because of the scale, the size of the property. Obviously, if you're talking about a quarter-acre residential parcel, it's probably going to be pretty easy to figure out what we're talking about. Here, given the size of the property and given the language that's actually used in the enforcement order, it's impossible to discern. So to your point, yeah, I would absolutely expect that an enforcement order like this would have at least some sort of a map. It sounds as though Mr. Hannon handed out to you maybe had some aerial photographs with GIS overlays or something along those lines. So it could have marked that. I mean, it doesn't have to be Nobel Prize worthy mapping. It really just has to be something to give the property some sense of where the alleged violations are occurring. And I think really without that, we're out of bounds. And if I may also, just to respond to something the town council said, our firm does work for cities and towns and conservation commissions all the time. I do a ton of work with commissions just like yours and other municipalities. So we certainly do have a lot of experience working with and advising commissions. This is not something that we haven't done. Thank you.
Yeah, please. Hold on, Josh. Mr. Blake, please.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I'm Jeffrey Blake, town council. And to answer your question, I think that it's a little disingenuous, as Marilee has just pointed out, Ms. Kelly has just pointed out. There is only one area with priority habitat. That was part of the order. And with respect to the buffer zones, there are numerous buffer zones in there, and PJ Keating, having had to obtain the necessary permits and the like, understands and knows where those buffer zones are. I don't believe that the order is so vague that it absolutely isn't upholdable. I really think you should ratify this order, and we will certainly be more than happy to work with Keating to get these remedies. But for them to just say, oh, we don't know what happened after we were required to go to court and get a court order to get on their property. We don't know what happened or where it is, therefore, you guys can't do anything. I think you ought to ratify the order to the extent that they need further clarification. We'd be happy to further clarify it with them. But there are some serious wetland violations on that property.
We have a copy of the enforcement order here. You have a copy of the EO with you. They should read it all out. I'll just get to the real meat of it here. So the question I asked is extent and type of activity. It says stockpiling of stone, silt, and quarry materials in buffer zone or bordering vegetated wetland and priority habitat. The activity has been or is being conducted in an area subject to protection under Chapter 130, Section 40, or the buffer zone without approval from the issuing authority. This order states that the property owner, his agents, permittees, and all others shall immediately cease and desist from any activity affecting the buffer zone and or resource areas. So, and they're asking for a notice of intent to be filed by September 1 for the following: storage of stone and other materials in the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. No further work shall be performed until a public hearing has been held and an order of conditions has been issued to regulate said work. Just for the record, this is not a public hearing. This discussion. This has not been opened as a hearing. The property owner shall take the following action to prevent further violations of the Act: stop all further additions to stockpiles, file a notice of intent to store materials in the buffer zone, and also attend the meeting, which they're doing now. And so that's it. But this doesn't sound super onerous. It sounds like you're filing paperwork with, to have us decide whether or not you need a notice of intent or a resource, request the determination and applicability. That's our order. I don't know if you wanted it. Doug, please.
Doug Espino, Environmental Compliance Manager for PJ Keating. Two quick questions. What is the priority habitat protecting? That's my first question. And my second one was the property was entered prior to the search warrant being issued. So to say that they did not have access to the property, whether, we know it was entered. So let's not say that we didn't give them permission to enter the property. The property was entered regardless of permission or not. That should be limited. So if you're talking out back, that's where you're parking. Again, we didn't receive any locusts, anything coming into this. There's no work being done out there. So we obviously need to cease of any work being be safe as well. So I would just ask the commission, what species is out there? And do they realize that that was redelineated in 2017 by the National Heritage Endangered Species Program? All I've heard is 2009. Thank you.
Box turtles?
I'm sorry, Scott.
I said, I believe it's box turtles back there.
What kind of box turtle is that?
I don't have species on here.
Thought around here we
Only
only,
that.
I thought around here we only had Eastern.
There you go. Yeah.
So everybody that's here, I thank you for your patience as we work through this. Mr. Vigneault, please.
Any plans that you have before you, be it the ANRAD plan from 2009 or any other plan you have before you, do you have a line that shows the 2017 redelineation by the Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program? You don't. It's readily available on MassGIS. The old 2009 delineation actually was into the quarry, down the transmission line along the northern portion of the property. We had Natural Heritage come out. They realized that that delineation was inaccurate. Turtles can't go into the quarry. They redelineated it. The redelineation is, and I can't tell, like some people can tell whether the line is on the ground. I can't tell. But it very clearly shows it going around what was out there with regards to piles and whatnot at the time of the delineation. Very clear, it shows it undulating line going around. So I've been an environmental scientist. I mentioned this last time, 37 years in this, and you cannot tell where you are on the ground by just comparing the GIS map and walking out somewhere. We are. Thank you.
You going to be able to meet again in 2 weeks, or is it going to be 3? How much do you think those 2017 maps would change things? Little, a little, a lot? Mr. Bourgier, did you say that you had not seen these photos before?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. It's conceivable if they were part of a PowerPoint presentation that maybe we had seen them, but we've not been provided them in this proceeding, and we certainly didn't see them leading up to this hearing as the evidence that was going to be presented to the commission.
I'm going to invite you over here because I'm seeing photos here that are showing.
Okay, I think Doug is probably the person who's best suited to look at this.
When I'm looking at these, I'm seeing erosion that's going into this area here, and to me, based on these maps, that looks like it's buffer zone.
Where's the wetland?
Good. That's the image I'm looking for. Wetland line on these.
And how was the how was the wetland line superimposed on an aerial photograph? That was the 10-year marker of the NFL.
So there's a line here. You get all these other smaller delineations.
These are all inaccurate. We had this discussion of here, which is what the discussion was. The previous enforcement order, which you did not ratify. So, it's up here. This is off our property. This is off our property. Sorry, it's off our property.
Still keep these stuff in the proper zone, proper property.
It's not clear to me that, I have to say, I'm still not entirely clear where this sits on this and what buffer zones we're talking about. It's just really difficult for me to fit it with the view. Makes sense.
I would suggest around 5 years, we can clarify the accuracy of these maps. If you want to appeal, we stand right now. That
All due respect, like I just heard you say, this is maybe over here. I don't think anyone can say.
Now, Merrily is thinking that this is back here.
Yep, so again, Mr. Chairman, so the wetland line is there, according to Mass GIS. Where are the piles in relation to that wetland line? We don't have any, that's just the line of Mass GIS pickup. Oh, there's wetland right there. We agree to that.
Yeah, and I guess my question is,
Did you take a visit?
I just saw the soil board presentation online, and it's very clear if you look at it.
well, the point I was making earlier was to simply say that these are not definitive wetland boundaries. Mass GIS delineations overlaid on aerial photos.
Very nice. Small.
It's really unfortunate that that's the case. I think there's an easier way to describe that. To inform the commission, but based on this,
Still work it out, just because of around 5 road, doesn't suddenly mean we can, work it. I think the commission, that counts, the town absolutely is going to work out. The issue has become, while your client indicated that we were allowed on the farm, we were allowed to be, we tried to go back there, stop, that's what the administrator found. Well,
No,
they're
that's
not
not
in the
true.
business
You do not
of
have-
shutting down PJ.
You do not
They
have
just
the right
want-
PPE to go into a gunshot site.
Yeah, okay.
That's why you want all.
And I think in a different setting, you may the exact same argument. That's it. They ratify this order, you can come and show us a plan that says, you know, you're wrong. Like I said, they can certainly do that. They can, you can bring them down and show them. You can walk them out there. You can show them. You bring Mary Lou with you. You can show them. And if it's wrong, I don't think it is. I think that they've got better than a more probable than not evidence that there's a violation. And I think that it's well within their right to ratify that. But if you come in here and telling us that the new delineation for the protected species habitat is different, you didn't bring a big, 6 by 8 poster that says, here's our stuff, here's our stuff, here's our stuff. You can bring it.
It's very difficult to it's very, very difficult to respond to allegations which are entirely untrue. You are putting the burden on us to essentially disprove an enforcement order that then issued to us, which, as I've indicated already, I don't need to keep saying the same thing as you know, but it really is not the preferred way. There was another way we could.
But what I'm trying to say is, try to move forward.
I don't recall, Mr. Blake, ever seeing any letter from the commission raising these concerns and asking to wait, to explain, No, that's it. That is the way I would typically expect a commission to proceed with these.
And moreover, it was directed to Mr. Hand to not do anything with the board members. Why did it? That's fine, but we do not say that this killing came from our property. We were being continually harassed by Mr. Hannon. We had it, so we said, report it, it's not on our property. We can issue that to the conservation commission.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
As Doug mentioned earlier, there are other issues at a site like this with respect to access. It's not a site where anybody can just go out and walk on in. So that's another important thing to keep in mind. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, but there are very real considerations.
Immediate measure fines that will be issued to not wear appropriate PPE and be escorted by a measure certified. That was the reasoning why we didn't allow it to go back here on previous site meetings. But they didn't ask. But I asked pertaining to the other enforcement that was to have an opportunity to go look at these salt marks that were supposed to be impact on the society. No one can say that that's all I should say. It's been completely dredged under EPA supervisor. We talked to foreman at the site today and asked him, as alleged by Mr. Haney, whether he came across a big pile of silt at our outfall. He said, absolutely not. That's not the truth. That's what was told us to be the truth. But when we talked to the individual, Joe Maloney, foreman for that project, he said that was categorically false. And you can't even gain access out there if it weren't for the dredging project that's going on now and the swamp access. It's impossible to get out there. So we had for the super website, and the fact that now everything's dredged, no more salt touch. What would be the remedy of that? There isn't, because there's no impact. You've got this been eradicated by EPA to clean up the PCB, which in my view is a whole lot more serious than permanent discharge from the National Pollution Discharge System which we are in full compliance with. So in other words, as I explained to the board, previously, by signing off on that previous enforcement order about the salt action plans, you're basically saying that EPA is not doing their job with respect to our effluent limit discharge. Right here. And we did. But that was in 2017. So, would you, so since that occurred, we haven't violated, okay? So we got slapped on the wrist, I agree, there was issues with the discharge, okay, that's written, that's it. Consent order, it's all said and done. If you want to punish us again, because that happened, I think we've been duly punished by EPA. Now, even you, I think, would agree that you can't punish someone over and over and over again. For past discussion.
I would like, it's always good to support one's conservation agent. I still have a lot of questions. And in my mind, whenever an enforcement order goes out, it should be tight. And if I have this many questions, then I'm not feeling like this enforcement order is tight. I would like to do a site visit, but I know if I'm going to do that, I have to have steel-toed shoes, right?
Yes, sir.
And a hard hat, which is something you can supply, correct?
We can supply hard hats and some vests, not shoes,
Right.
not safety glasses.
Right. So those are all things we'd have to bring with us.
That's right.
Okay. So I would.
That's extra rules, not ours. But, this is the exact same situation with not being able to see the salt marsh as my dredge. If had all gone out there that morning and looked, you would have seen that there's no evidence of silt on anything out there. It's gone. If there was, it's gone now. Similarly here, the commission hasn't had an opportunity, so sight unseen. They expect you, as members, to sign a document that basically you're saying, yes, this is correct.
No, they're expecting you to rely on the agent that you've hired who went out there with her own eyes and viewed all of this. She has put in there, signed it, putting her name and her credentials on the line and brought this to you.
I agree with you.
It's
And I support my agent. She's done a great job with this town.
not giving on a reasonable level.
But as the chair of this commission, I'm allowed to ask questions. And I still have my questions. And I don't. Okay. Yeah. And whatever questions I had, they're not a reflection on the agent. They're a reflection on the complexity of this project and this issue. How do the commission members feel about doing a site visit?
I'd like to do a site visit.
Yeah, so would I.
How soon can that happen, Mr. Daniel? It would normally be a Saturday morning.
Yeah, well, I think we can, if you're asking about this Saturday morning, we can certainly get back to you by tomorrow morning.
Should I ask my commission members, are you available this Saturday to do this? Oh, yeah. No, all right, so let's go for the following. So it'd be the following week, which is what, the 29th? This Saturday is the 22nd.
Well, you said a date, Mr. Chairman, that we'll do everything right away. Reason, trying to stall, trying to you want. Number of allegations across the board, besides these, patent laws. Just think of these.
Well, yeah, that's what I would like to do. Narrow the focus. So, Rick, you say 29th could work for you?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
All right, and so let's plan a site visit on the 29th. It's in my nature to ask a lot of questions. All right, so PJ Keating folks will arrange a site visit for us Saturday, the 29th of August.
Mr. Chairman, what time?
That's what I was just going to ask. We usually do these starting about 8:30, is that okay? Usual time, 8:30 a.m.? So, then hopefully we'll have a meeting shortly after that, whether it's Tuesday the 1st or the Tuesday the 8th of September. So any more questions or comments before we do a vote on the enforcement order? Mr. Blake, did you have a...
I do have a comment, Mr. Chairman.
To the extent that you're gonna hold off on the enforcement order until you've had an opportunity to do a site visit, I would suggest that you just continue the order itself and then continue this to a date certain, which would be your next meeting to determine whether or not to ratify, so that the order is valid and in effect unless and until you vote it down at your next meeting. And the reason I say that is everybody here will be able to know when the next meeting is and when we can come back and discuss it.
Thank you, that's what I was going to do. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to continue this discussion and the voting of the enforcement order to the next meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? In favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, thank you. So, I think that's it for that item. Any further questions or comments? Okay, we're going to get on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you. Somebody's glasses, please. So our last item on here is agent updates.
Thank you all for your time.
Well, we got the hint dropped that the next MAC conference will be October. Sounds like online. All right. Anybody else on the commission with business for the commission? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? Meeting adjourned at 7.